It's the book of Revelation, chapter 1, verse 3. Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. All right, before I get started on this lesson, I want to give all praises, glory, and honors unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rechak Wadash, Shalom, Rabarakim, Labacharium, which is peace and blessings to the hopefully elect, as well as those that believe in the gospel. All right, and may you endure to the end, Lord willing. All right, and basically, I don't have a particular title for this lesson, but I just want to get into the importance of reading, all right, and understanding the ancient stories of our forefathers, man. All right, so Lord willing, this lesson be edifying and straight to the point. All right, which is why it says, blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy and keep those things which are written therein. All right, because the Lord, ultimately caused these things to be written in paper, all right, of these accounts, all right, of the history, of the things that, we need to know, all right, we need to have, especially in these latter times, all right, things that we're going to need to rely and depend on, man, all right, things and stories of how we can reflect on and say, oh, you might go through the same situation, as not exactly the same, but it might have the same test of integrity. Okay, so this is why it's important to read, all right, and keep the things that are written in the scriptures, man. All right, because it's definitely watching for the saving of our souls. Just knowing the different points in the stories and things that is very important. All right, are staples of building blocks in the scriptures. All right, because this is our heritage. All right, this is our schoolmaster. All right, the scriptures, man. But I'm gonna start off in First Maccabees, the 2nd chapter. All right, it's in verse 51. It says, "Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did." Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time. So shall ye receive great honor and an everlasting name. All right, so we call to remembrance the things that our forefathers did in their times. Okay, and it's gonna, which this coincides with Hebrews the 11th chapter, man. All right, and we're gonna get that too. It's just a exhorting, all right, faith boosting lesson. To understand the history and the different accounts and things that hopefully it'll inspire brothers to go read these accounts. All right, or go refresh their minds on these accounts that happen. Because we're getting ready to go through the same things, man. All right, our faith is about to be tested on a whole nother level, you see. So verse 52, it says, "Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness? Joseph, in the time of his distress, kept the commandment and was made Lord of Egypt." All right, and these are accounts that you can read in Genesis. It says, "Phinehas, our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood." Jesus, right, which is Yahweh Shai in the Hebrew, for fulfilling the word, was made a judge in Israel. All right, which that's actually talking about Joshua. All right, it's not talking about the Son of the Most High, Yahweh Shai. It's talking about Joshua. All right, because Joshua in the Hebrew, all right, is he delivers. In which his name was an omen, all right, for what he actually did, you see. Caleb, for bearing witness before the congregation, received the heritage of the land, and David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Elias, for being zealous and fervent in the law, was taken up into heaven, which is Elijah, right? Ananias, Azarias, and Mishael, all right, which is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, by believing were saved out of the flame. Daniel, for his innocency, was delivered from the mouth of lions. Okay? Verse 61, "And thus consider ye throughout all ages that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome." You see? So it just ran down a list All right, of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. About 10, prophets and, staples in the scriptures, certain men, right? All of these men had examples of what? Great faith, all right, and ultimately mercy, all right, which, ultimately leads to grace, from Yahweh Bashim Yahushai in ancient times, all right? Showing that what? If we believe, if we have faith, all right, if we repent, we believe that the Lord have mercy on us and Lord willing he do, then what? We shall not be overcome. You see, that's why it says in verse 61, and thus consider ye throughout all ages, man, all right? And which that word age will go into aeon, all right? Another word in the Greek for world, right? That none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. You see? So when you go into Sirach, the 2nd chapter, it reiterates it, all right? That we should always be putting our trust, all right, our faith, all right, in Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, okay? And there's nothing else that we should be trusting in, all right? It's Sirach chapter 2, verse 10. It says, look at the generations of old and see did ever any trust in the Lord and was confounded, right? When you look at those generations, all right, let's go to Hebrews, the 11th chapter. All right, this is why it's important to read, you see? Right? And I'm not going to read all of these accounts, all right? But it starts with Abel, all right? Now, the first account started with Abraham, but this starts in the very, beginning, all right, with Cain and Abel, man. You see? Right? Then it goes down to Enoch, okay? Jumps down to Noah, all right? So I'm not going to read them, but I just want to I'm going to jump down. Let me finish this out. It says, or did any abide in his fear and was forsaken, or whom did he ever despise that called upon him? You see? Who did the Lord ever despise, all right, that he had favor on, all right, that called upon him in the times of trouble, in the times of need, all right? Which is why the scriptures tell you in Proverbs, the name of the Lord is a strong tower, and the righteous run it into it and are safe. You see? So this is what we have to be practicing in these times, man, building up our faith, all right? Getting into the history, knowing what happened to Cain and Abel, right? Knowing why Cain's sacrifice wasn't accepted, right? Knowing stories of Noah, all right? Which everybody should know the story of Noah, But I'm gonna jump down, all right? This one speaks about Sarah, man. I think it's 24. Along with Moses. And if you look at all of these accounts, and I like to, I will read a verse and then, I have the precepts in my Bible, all right, which I didn't want it to be a long, drawn out lesson like that, because I can go to each account, in my Bible, man, all right, and read those accounts for myself, just learning of having the faith and insurmountable, all right, amount of faith that our forefathers had. It wasn't no such thing as doubting, but this verse 20, I'll get 24, right? It says, by faith Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of the Most High than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, right? And that's the biggest, and what made me bring that out, just kind of meditating, listening to a few lessons earlier, right? The only thing that we can be, quote unquote, blessed with on the side by Esau Edom, all right, is money, man. All right, because I think it was on the radio or something this morning. You had this whole new thing with Diddy out, all right, and here it is. You got all of these people, okay, with all of these riches, all right, so-called riches, all right, fiat money, right? And here it is, you still wind up in jail, man, you know? And which, you know, that's what they, you know, tell Jake, that's how you make it, you know? Money. Getting rich, you know? When that's basically a vain thing, all right? And it's not even real money, you know? We want the power, man, all right? That's why Moses rather choose to suffer the afflictions, right, with his people, man, right? Read verse 26, it says, esteeming the reproach of the Mashiach greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of reward, all right? By faith, he forsook Egypt, right? Not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. All right, and this is, you know, all of these accounts, man, it tells you that these things happen through faith, all right, through belief in Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, right? When you go all the way to the top, it tells you what faith is. It says the substance of things hoped for, okay, the evidence of things not seen, right? Because it's not faith, all right, if you can see it, right? You gotta not see it to believe it. And it's truth, man, all right? We haven't seen Yahushua. We haven't seen the destruction, right? We haven't been saved from the destruction, right? We haven't seen the mandatory implementation of the MOTB, but we believe it, all right? We know it's coming. You see? Verse 2, it says, for by it the elders obtained a good report. You see? So faith is the main centerpiece, all right, along with Yahushua. All right, believing, okay, is the main centerpiece to making it on the chariots, man. All right, but you can't build yourself up if you don't read, though. You know, if you don't know the history, get into the accounts, all right, the different things and the different ways that the Lord showed mercy on our forefathers, man. All right, and how they always believed through what? Through faith, you know. But I'm ending it off. You can grab the book of Romans, right? So how can I not end it off with that? Romans chapter 15, verse 4. It says, for whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning. All right. And if you don't read the things that were written, how will you learn? You see? That we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. You see? So how are we going to have comfort, all right? How are we going to know what the comfort of the scriptures is, man? All right, case in point, 1 Thessalonians, the 4th chapter. What happens if, you know, we get put to death in this thing, right? But it tells you at the very last verse in that chapter that, therefore, comfort one another with these words. So if you don't read these accounts, man, right, if you don't read the scriptures, how are you going to build yourself up to have comfort in the times that we're getting ready to walk through, man? You see? So when you read it in the NLT, it says, such things were written in the scriptures long ago to teach us, right? That's why the brothers say, man, you know, particularly down here, every answer that we need to know is in the scriptures, man, right? Every answer we need to know, all right, majority of the life decisions that we need to make, all right, we don't need counsel, all right, it's already in the scriptures, okay? That's why it tells you that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren, all right? Or when thou art converted, strengthen thy brother, you know, because it's going to be things that is in the scriptures and things, it might not be in the scriptures, but what? The Lord done had a brother go through that already, you see? But I don't want to veer off topic, all right? Just make sure we reading, man, all right? Give attendance to reading, all right? It says such things were written in the scriptures long ago to teach us. And the scriptures gives us hope and encouragement as we wait patiently for God's promises to be fulfilled, man. You see? This is our what you call it? Dang, man, the word slips my mind. You know, but this is our therapist, all right? The scriptures, man. You know, but that's pretty much the point. So, yeah, man. So, just like I started off in Revelation, the first chapter, blessed is he that read it. And you gotta read, man. All right, that's how you get built up in this thing. All right, so and that's a reason, right? Before I go, that you had all of these Edomites basically come out with the saying, or you want to hide something from a nigga, put it in a book, right? Because Jake don't like to read, you see. But we don't do that in the truth, man. All right, we read, man. That's how we build ourselves up through faith. That's how we learn, okay? That's how I become a better teacher and a better student, man, So with that, man, I'm going to go ahead and give all praises, glory, infinite honors unto Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahushua, Ba'ashim, Rachak, Kodash, and double honors once again.